G'day folks, ZiggyD here. Now I know some of you have already quit or are considering quitting or maybe skipping the league, but maybe just pause, take a couple days off and come back for the real league start because GGG just might be saving Necropolis. This might be the most winningest big buff to a new league launch within a few days that I think I've ever seen in the entire 10 years plus I've been playing Path of Exile. We've had some pretty big updates that were kind of rolled out over a few, weeks or months in some cases that ended up getting a league to a very good state. But obviously we had a rough launch here with Necropolis, and while some of the high-end potential for crafting was there, as seen in my recent video, I think, there is no low end to bottom end to mid end sort of appeal for the vast majority of players, really. Like let's not beat around the bush. Basically no appeal whatsoever. That coupled with an unavoidable mechanic that was making some content, especially in maps, really hard without really seeing a direct and clear connection to the reward that you're getting because of it. That's a lot of whiplash from last league. So the changes come in two areas: gameplay and then of course the crafting. The first change is that itemizing the corpses for trade will now be free instead of 1 chaos each, so that will immediately make a lot more of them sellable, but more importantly perhaps, you'll be able to itemize them from maps instead of having to collect them, then go to your Necropolis and then itemize them to trade. You can, if you see something that you want to sell, you can collect it, turn it into a coffin straight away and sell it right away. So that's a pretty good quality of life improvement and should also benefit the economy of this league quite a bit as well. Also a good buff for people who still don't want to engage in the crafting even after these changes, because you'll be able to just collect these and throw them in a dump tab with a price of 5C or whatever on the whole tab and make yourself some nice currency. There's also basically 3 lines of text here that they're buffing the amount of collectible corpses, Allflame Embers, they're further buffing Allflame Embers, and then they're adding more Allflame Ember packs that are even more rewarding. This part, kind of, the Allflame Embers system surprised me in just how much it seems to be maybe bringing to the game, and there hasn't been enough time to fully explore that, but there's definitely some potential there. The ability to replace entire mob packs in your maps with new special ones that have extra rewards or have larger or smaller pack sizes to be able to mess with things. Actually a pretty cool gameplay system. So them making that much more available and expanding on it with hopefully more rewarding ones. I think given the reception to this league, they are holding no punches back here and just going as hard as they can with the buff. So I expect that they'll probably be pretty good. They're really coming out swinging here, and I think that is definitely the right approach, since this has turned out to be one of the worst leagues for league retention in the first few days that we have had, possibly ever, or definitely in recent history. So it really makes sense for them to go super hard with these buffs. So back to the Allflame Embers, they're also going to be buffing the existing ones as well, increasing their pack sizes and rewards and things like that, so how much various different currencies or whatever things they drop. So more tattoos, more splinters and things like that they'll be dropping, maybe more XP and bigger packs from those. Should make for some juicier maps that you can kind of build yourself, which is, yeah, I think this part of the league mechanic will really be getting fleshed out pretty significantly here, it sounds like. Currently, the devoted modifiers often give 1 or 2 or 3% chance for certain things like Jeweler's Orbs or Fusings or Chaos or whatever to drop. And you've also got those laughably bad ones that are 50% chance or 25% chance of an armor being converted to a Jeweler's Orb. Those were just so hilariously bad. It's especially compared to last league, just the idea that oh, you have a chance of getting a singular Jeweler's Orb per item that the monster would drop. It's well, I can't wait for that Jeweler's Orb bomb of 4 Jorbs dropping from a mob. So they are getting substantial buffs, it sounds like, as well. So they're going to be rewarding those, specifically the currency ones, which those ones I think were a little bit embarrassing in terms of the level of rewards. So hopefully some big buffs there. Finally, they'll also be lowering the danger of the more dangerous of the modifiers, especially at end game. So given to how spicy I'm starting to feel that they are now that I'm getting into red maps and people who are doing some tier 17s and stuff like that, that sounds like quite the good thing. So that's obviously some nice improvements just for the physical playing of the league mechanic, but the grave crafting is the thing I'm truly interested in, because if you're going to do a crafting league, it has to be really good, right? And it really has to draw people in. I talked about this in my last video. You really have to draw in the average player as much as possible. Some people will always just never be interested in a crafting league, and that's fine. They don't necessarily have to make every league for everyone. But if you are going to do a crafting league, you have to try and give it the best possible appeal to the biggest number of players who aren't in that initial category of people who will never touch it, right? Everyone else, there needs to be a decent chance of this appealing. So we're getting some mega buffs here. Currently, you have to, if you want, say, an energy shield base, like I did with my chest craft in my last video, you have to make it so that you block strength bases and dexterity bases, or, you know, tinker with some of those modifiers. That's all gone. They're making it, you can just select the base type that you want now. So you'll be able to choose if you want dexterity intelligence hybrid base, you'll be able to just choose that. There will still be RNG on exactly which item you get, so whether you get a Vile Regalia versus a lower end item base, for example, but there still does exist the modifier, which I used in my craft, which allows you to, it re-rolls the base several times, picking the highest item level one. I think there's probably more room for them to do something else here in the future, and Neon has said in this post that they are going to be looking at this even more in the future. So if this still is a bit of an issue, and we need more tools to be able to do this, because right now it's fine, I think, to be able to get something like a Vile Regalia. But if you want like a slightly lower end base, because there's something that's a bit better for you, you want the move speed base or something, you're kind of fresh out of luck. That's just pure RNG if you can get that. So there might be a bit more to look at here, but this is a very good change. Next up, they're just going to be increasing the chances of getting some of the rarer crafts like fractured modifiers and mirrored outcomes. So the ones that drop extra items or allow you to create unique bases for other crafting methods and things like that. These ones are all very excited, and some of the ones that I was definitely getting very amped for, and I hadn't seen any of them personally, so hopefully they're really, really buffing those. This next change is huge. They're removing the tiers from the craft. So instead of getting like 100% increased chance for lightning modifiers and having to scrounge through the dirt for a dozen of those corpses, now every single time one of those drops, it'll just be max. So they're all 500% increased chance for lightning modifiers. So they're really slimming down the total number of corpses needed for a craft there. You won't really have to use a full graveyard with this like these. It would just be a couple of those. You know, getting like 1500% or something, so 3 corpses instead of up to 15 corpses, for example. This next change, however, is the biggest single one, I think. We have taken all crafts that affect modifier rating and compressed them into a single craft that affects all modifiers instead of being a specific one. Now, this is the plus like 50 or plus 100 to fire affix tier rating system, right? So the way that we were using this was you were just adding all of them to your craft anyway. Like that was the correct way to do the craft, like even ones you didn't want. So if you didn't want fire affixes, you would still increase the rating tier of that, because there was some debate about exactly how this worked and how effective it was. In theory, it blocked the lower end fire mods from even spawning, so you'd be less likely to roll those. And if you did get the mod you didn't want, the fire res, for example, it would actually still be a high tier, so it'd at least be worth something to you. Since that's the way we were using it, I think they've done a really brilliant solution here. They've just made it one single corpse. It'll just probably be something like plus 100 to affix tiers, just for everything. Brilliant. That is the way how we were using it anyway. It makes sense. I assume now that'll be a bit rarer, potentially, but as long as we're getting a decent supply of those in collaboration with the other things, then you might only have to throw like 2 or 3 of those into your craft alongside 2 or 3 of the specific increase and decrease chances that you want. So you might be looking at something like just maybe 15 corpses for a higher end craft, maybe a bit more if it's a bit more complicated. So that is vastly simplifying, but also buffing things dramatically. So that's really improving the low end. This is probably blowing out the top end, which I said like maybe they'll have to be careful about that. But at this point, I think it's okay to make this ridiculously busted for the high end players, because you really need to get that appeal in for the regular player, right? For the everyman. Alright, there's a few extra little quality of life things like Control F to search, currently you have to click it, and being able to use corpses on the list of corpses rather than having to walk around your Necropolis and find the actual corpse, which is just silly. They'll also be changing how the sorting works, grouping them by type. And one final change, another buff, is that right now, kind of the only really valid way to make like a 6-link chest drop, for example, is to do the +1 and then 6-link maximum sort of crafts. Now they're making it so that the grave crafts that reroll socket number and links, so the ones that are like reroll 20 times and give you the best result, they're going to be buffing those significantly, which is pretty good because you had to use a really ridiculous number of those to even have a chance at a 6-link. When the expected outcome for a 6-link is something like 1500 fuses, roughly, depending on quality, right? then how many corpses of like roll 20 fusings and then select the best result do you actually have to have on your craft to even have a shot at a 6 link, right? Like it's just not valid. So if they do those like 100, 200, 300, something big like that, then that might actually be a usable alternative to the ones that are just the static +1 extra link for each item. The former, there will still be the better option, but it'll at least give 2 alternative routes you can go for this now. One final note that I actually was pretty happy to see personally is that they mentioned that they kind of learned a lesson here about releasing on public holidays, which is like, I know it's a mixed bag. Some of you like, oh, I have a lot of time to play on a public holiday, so it's great. But obviously them releasing on a public holiday when a lot of their people are off for Easter is obviously an issue if they need to make any sort of rapid changes. Thankfully, there wasn't a lot of bugs with this league, because it would have been a disaster if there was a lot of like server issues and bugs and them having difficulty responding to that. But obviously that's delayed the kind of response to this a little bit, even though I do think this is a pretty quick and timely response, all things considered. But I also know that someone like streaming the game, it would be nice to not have things be on public holidays in the future, so I can, you know, spend that time with my family more instead of being like, you know, this is my job, I work, I play Path of Exile for a living, it was part of my time. So I think that's a really nice thing to hear, that they'll be trying to avoid public holidays where they can in the future, which I think that would be preferable overall. Like I said, a really impressive suite of changes here, a very aggressive and heavy-handed response to them, where I think one was very much warranted, and possibly the like spiciest what we're working on that I have seen in quite some time. But anyway, I'd be looking forward to it. Maybe take a couple days off and come back when some of the updates out. We don't have an exact timeline yet, but I'm assuming a bit later this week. Hopefully for the weekend would be ideal for most of these changes. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD. Thanks for watching.